Our next session brings together Olympic athletes and climate experts advocating for clean air and healthy communities. The panel will be moderated by award-winning climate-colored goggles reporter Sammy Roth and includes panelists Team Canada Olympic beach volleyball player and 2024 silver medalist Melissa Humana-Paredes, Team USA Olympic snowboarder and climate advocate B. Kim, and applied climate scientist from Climate Central, Kaitlyn Trudeau.
So thank you everyone for being here for this panel and just for being here at the summit today. Really excited for this conversation with some incredible Olympic athletes. Melissa here and B, two incredible folks who I'm excited to hear from, and Kaitlyn for joining us as well. Kaitlyn has studied, by the way, the impacts of climate change on sports, and Melissa working with the group Eco Athletes, and B with Protect Our Winters, are two athletes who are really out front at advocating for climate action and using their voices as athletes. And so I know that today has mostly been focused thus far on the Olympics as sort of a catalyst for climate mitigation and climate resilience, but this discussion is going to focus more on how is climate change affecting sports, and then how can sports itself be used as a motivator for people to really understand climate better and to take climate seriously and to act on it. So, excited for this conversation. And Melissa and B, I want to start with the two of you, I think. Most athletes, especially here in the United States, are not out there moonlighting as climate activists or climate advocates. Some exceptions. We had Russell Westbrook here this morning, which was incredible, talking about air quality and talking about climate. I'm curious for the two of you what it was that made you realize that this was something that that you needed to take seriously, that you really wanted to use your voice on as athletes, folks with big platforms, with big social media followings, to do something about. What was it that clicked for you? Melissa, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, my first kind of aha moment was, and really the catalyst for me joining this community, was at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, 2021 Olympics, which was the hottest Olympics ever recorded. And I play beach volleyball, and so we are so immersed to the conditions, and we just have to kind of deal with the weather or the conditions that we're given. And so being in Tokyo, a lot of our lead up, like 2 years out, 3 years out of the Tokyo Olympics, was about how are we gonna lower our core body temperature? How are we going to mitigate some of this heat exhaustion that the athletes are going to be exposed to? That was a lot of our preparation, a lot of our nutrition, our sports science, our strength coaches, our coaches, all of our conversations were about trying to keep our core body temperature down. We were making custom ice vests that we could wear in our warm-up, wear in our timeouts, and we were doing and spending a lot of time and energy on trying to kind of find these solutions to, or these band-aids to this problem of the climate crisis and of extreme heat at the Olympics. And it dawned on me, we were warming up for a court, and we were all taking pictures with the thermometer that was at our courts, and it was like, oh, I work in Celsius. It was like 45 degrees Celsius, which is very hot.
Can you translate that into Fahrenheit for us uneducated Americans?
I'm not very good, but I think it's over 100. Can anyone do the math for me? It was very hot.
It sounds too hot to be sustainably competing in.
Yes. And the conversations were no longer about how to maximize performance. It was about how are we going to stay healthy and how are we going to avoid heat exhaustion. And that's when I was like, we got to get to the root of the problem. Like, there have to be other athletes and other people in this space that are also just as concerned about what this is doing to our sports and the longevity that we have in our sports, and even like what cities and countries and times of day that we can compete in, because now there are different locations that we can no longer go and compete to because it's too hot or there's too much inclement weather. It's just so extreme now that it's really impacting sports. So for me, it was the Tokyo Olympics that got me
And
involved.
It's interesting, by the way, that you used the term Band-Aid there to describe those solutions that you were coming up with, because I think Band-Aid implies that's not sustainable. That doesn't really solve the problem, which is why you need the deeper solutions.
Exactly.
B, I think, and I want to get back to heat, by the way, because the World Cup has been going on right now, and heat has been the big story for the World Cup. But I think heat is obvious to everyone. B, what has it been like for you as a snowboarder, and you were, competing in Milan Cortina this year? Milan Cortina, excuse me. What has the impact been like for you seeing, dealing with snow, dealing with winter weather conditions? I think that might be a little bit less obvious for folks, although I'm sure there are some people in the room here who get it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the common misconception with climate change is global warming, and that's the only thing that we're seeing, which is obviously very true. But in snow sports, in snowboarding, and on all levels of snowboarding, the biggest thing we're seeing is, like you were saying, extremes, extreme weather, extreme cold, extreme storms, wind directions and patterns shifting into ways that we've never seen before. I don't think I really had one realization moment that was like, oh, this is the aha. I think what's different from snowboarding and more traditional sports is that we are in the elements. The elements are our main catalyst of issues when it comes to practice and to competitions. It's not like soccer, it's not like volleyball where you can go in your backyard and get a million reps doing the same thing. Every single time is something different. The snow has changed, the lighting has changed, the weather has changed, and we only already, our training and competition facilities are so few. There's about 3 in the United States and probably around 6 to 8 worldwide.
That few, wow.
Yes, and that's not even all at the same time. This one is during the fall, this one's during the spring, this one's the one during the summer. So already at a baseline, our options are very limited. And then once we bring in climate change and the effects of that, the weather's way too crazy here. Like we were saying, we can't go and train. We're going to Australia for 3 weeks in what's supposed to be prime conditions to train in the off season, and I only end up snowboarding for a day and a half. Saw a lot of kangaroos, but not a lot of snowboarding. So the way that we are able to approach snowboarding, the whole core of it is having to be different.
So, I mean, you're just getting started in your career. You're going to college this fall. I mean, have you been able to see the effects already, or are you hearing about the changes from people in all of these crazy places you're going to train? I mean, what has that been like?
Yeah, you go to the same places at the same time every year, and so you get to know the locals, and you also have, snowboarding is not that old of a sport, so a lot of the coaches have been going to these same training places for their whole careers as well, and you talk to them and they say, oh, this has been the craziest winter we've ever had, and that's why we're not snowboarding, is because it's dumping 10 feet of snow and it's shutting the whole town down, it's shutting the whole mountain down. Or this one glacier that we go to in Switzerland, one of the photographers lives there, grew up there, and he showed us a photo from 1988, and it was where the glacier was, and to where the glacier was now, it had receded probably around, 300 yards up, and it was just mind-boggling. I think it's also interesting to see, you can physically see the snow when it's white and when it's brown and when you're really missing that. But even here in California, every spring, the whole snowboard community goes to Mammoth, about a 5-6 hour drive from here, and it is the hub and the mecca of snowboarding and culture, and the time when the season's done and everyone can kind of relax but still push themselves. And for the first time in 25 years of this camp being run, this year it was canceled. There wasn't enough snow. They tried moving the half pipe to different locations, further up on the mountain in this place where there's more shade, and it wasn't feasible. It wasn't possible. It became dangerous for us to build a half pipe and to train and to risk our lives of, going up in the air and doing some flips and spins.
Wow, it never ceases to amaze me as a climate reporter when you hear people talk about where the glaciers used to be, or the snow, like most extreme winter I've ever seen, or the least snow, where, you talked about Tokyo in 2020, Melissa, just, the intense temperatures. And I always think, like, wow, this is what we're talking about in 2020 or 2024 or 2026. And it's like, what's 2030 going to be like? What's 2035 going to be like? What's 2045 going to be like? I mean, I'm sure these are things you're thinking about as athletes who have, long careers ahead of you still. Melissa, you're training right now for 2028, and by the way, thank you for being here today. You're in the midst of crisscrossing the country on the AVP tour right now, right? So I'm glad you were able to make it. What are your thoughts thinking ahead to 2028 in terms of what that's going to be like in Los Angeles? Because I asked that question having in mind the fact that the World Cup has been going on right now, and extreme heat has been the big story, and they're having to take these 3-minute hydration breaks every half. It just starts to make me wonder, how sustainable is that as a system? It affects players, it affects fans. I'm curious what you think things are going to be like a few years from now.
Yeah, I think things are changing so quickly. I feel like year after year, similar to be whenever we go to the same location that we go to for the last decade, you're seeing changes at this venue. You're seeing, we were in Switzerland last week, and there's these beautiful glaciers in the back of where our location is, and they used to be white. And now we're going back, and they've melted 4 months early. And
Wow.
it's unbelievable to see, like in my lifetime, in the last few years of being a professional athlete, I'm seeing the impact of it and the effects of it. And so it's really jarring. It can be really jarring as an athlete because we're there to focus on our craft and perform and do the best we can, and we train so hard for this, and on top of that, there's this whole other world that's happening outside of our sport, and it's impacting our sport, and it's impacting the whole community, and I think when you think of the sustainability and the longevity of outdoor sports and indoor sports, as well, they also require a lot of energy. In the future, it looks bleak, like it does. It looks a little hard to visualize, but I think communities like this and opportunities like this, when we have these conversations, to be really honest and to be transparent about what's happening, that it gives me hope that I think we'll be able to make things still work once we start talking about it.
I want to ask. Go ahead, B. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to add that it's been interesting to see the hydration breaks because we don't get those as snowboarders because we're very much 30 seconds, you're in the half pipe, and then you're out. But it's the same issue, just on the flip side, and it's. Now the more traditional sports are becoming affected, and it's something that us outdoor kind of athletes have been seeing for a long time.
And I promise I'll ask the hopeful what can we do questions in a minute. I'm glad you're going there because we need that, and that's what we're all here for. Obviously, is what can we all collectively do about it. Kaitlyn, the stories that Melissa and B are telling about their experiences. I mean, this is not isolated, right? I mean, you study this. You're studying the trends in terms of how sports are being affected. I mean, talk about some of the work you've done and the research that you've produced.
Yeah, unfortunately, these are not isolated. I've been at Climate Central about 8 years now and studied the Olympics several different times, Tokyo, Paris, this last time in Italy, and things like the World Cup. And what we're seeing is just that we are emitting these carbon dioxide out into the atmosphere, and it is really increasing heat in a way that is dramatically changing the environment across all seasons. And each time we have a major sporting event and I get to talk to athletes, it's just, they have these really dramatic stories about how things are completely changing the ways that things are done. And these are like top humans, like they are the best of the best, and climate change is taking them down at some of these events, right? These extreme heat events. There's like certain levels of heat where it affects how fast a player can run. Climate Central has this World Cup portal where we look at the probability that there's going to be performance impairing heat. And we have seen a dramatic amount of performance impairing heat this year. And a similar thing when, marathons, it's also really, when you have a certain level of heat, it makes it harder for people to be able to run faster. And so,
So if you can't get fans to care about health and safety, tell them that their favorite athletes aren't going to do as good, right?
Yeah, and I mean, look, if they're taking down the best of the best, I mean, and also keep in mind that there's athletes that have medical teams and ice baths. Do you guys have that? Because there's also people all over the world that have been suffering from climate change for decades. And it's an opportunity also to remind people that this is not something that just touches people on one day, one event. This is happening every day, all around the year, to everyone.
Before we get to the mitigation aspect, which is a word that I try not to use, mitigation, reducing emissions, fixing climate change, from a resilience standpoint, and Kaitlyn, I want to start with you on this. I mean, what can teams and leagues be doing to help protect athletes and fans? I mean, long term, because Melissa used the word Band-Aid earlier, which I said I like a lot. But I mean, what are there things that can be done more sustainably to help protect sports, the people on the field and the people in the stands? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think that there is, but I think a lot of them are Band-Aid solutions.
Yeah.
I think until we really get serious about reducing carbon emissions, I think that it's going to be kind of here for the long run. I mean, this is there are things you can do, yes. There's been a lot of talk about having the Winter Olympics at different times, Summer Olympics at different times, and that sounds, like, oh, that could be great, but there are all kinds of logistical issues and equity issues and resource issues that come along with that. And so I think that, yes, there are things we can do, being smart about what time of day we are having these major events, making sure that we have things, available to medical teams and things like that. But I think that, again, a lot of these are Band-Aid solutions, and we have to get serious about really changing what's happening in the background environment that's making this so dangerous for everyone.
I mean, are we going to, just to talk about the Band-Aids a little bit more, are we going to have to be moving up the World Cup to early in the summer? Are we going to have to, schedule the Winter Olympics, earlier in the winter, move it to different parts of the world?
Well, the Winter Olympics now, there's been a huge dramatic reduction in places where you can actually hold them.
Right. Last time we talked, I think we talked about how Utah might not be able to do it in 2034. Was that part of the conversation?
Yeah, one of the people used to be the mayor there. He says he doesn't think that it's actually going to happen, and it's they see it around the world, that they're saying that with the projections that we currently have, that it's going to be really hard to find a place to actually hold these events. They're dramatically being reduced. So it's not like you can just have it anywhere, just change it to any time of the year. These are also massive events that get planned years and years in advance, obviously, as we're talking about this now, 2 years before LA. And
2 years from today, right?
2 years from today.
Yeah.
So it's just not something that can just be changed in an instant.
Melissa, what do you guys think?
Yeah, Salt Lake is a very good example. For all those of us on the West Coast, knew it was a very, very rough winter. Salt Lake was hit especially hard. I think if they had to hold the Olympics there this year instead of Italy, I don't think it would have happened.
It was the warmest winter on record for the Western U.S. and the lowest amount of snowpack on record for the Western U.S.
Which is also one of the reasons we're having a water crisis in Southern California / the West, but that's a whole other story. I don't know, Melissa, do you have any thoughts?
I echo what has been said on the panel. I think every time I hear about hosting privileges of the Olympics, it's becoming more difficult, and it's harder and harder to find a host city. I had the privilege of going to the Milan Olympics as a spectator, and it was so warm. I overpacked immensely. I brought so many layers, and I did not need them. And I was like, I was not expecting this at the Winter Olympics, but it's happening, and it's just, I'm curious myself to see how the Olympics are going to be held in the future.
When you guys, Melissa and B, when you guys communicate with fans, when you post on social media, when you have other ways that and I'm curious what you do to communicate with fans and with folks in the sporting community, what do you say, what are you trying to get out there, what types of messages, what types of responses do you get? I'm just curious what the conversations are like when you guys are out there putting yourselves out talking about climate and the need for climate action, the need for clean energy, et cetera.
Yeah, I think it can be difficult as an athlete to speak out about any sort of sustainability initiatives, environmentalism, climate change. I think a lot of what maybe some athletes might be afraid of is the hypocrisy of, as an athlete, we travel a lot. And so we are just as much part of the problem. Are the way that sports and the entertainment industry of sports functions is also very much part of the problem. Who are the sponsors? How they're using their energy? What kind of energy they're using? I understand how it might seem counterintuitive for an athlete to speak out on this, but I think that's why I chose that it was so important for me to speak out on it and to join communities like eco-athletes and high-impact athletes and protect our winters. They're so important because it shows other athletes that it's actually okay to talk about it. We're not here to preach perfectionism. In fact, we can't preach perfectionism. We have to be imperfect advocates, and I think that was the most important messaging that I try and share on my social media. I'm very open about how much I travel. I track all of my kilometers that I travel on airplanes to competitions throughout the year. I translate that into a carbon emission amount, and I donate that amount to vetted climate charities every season. And so, and I share these numbers. I share the stats with people, and sometimes I do get called a hypocrite still, But more often than not, the conversations that I engage in and the responses I get are very overwhelmingly positive, and people just want to help and they just want to learn. And a lot of times when I'm at a tournament, people come up to me and they thank me for speaking about it, and so that helps me moving forward. I feel like I'm starting to see more and more athletes speak on it as well, which is great. I think it's important because it's impacting all of us in every industry. And I think the sporting industry is part of the entertainment industry. And I think when that starts to get hit so hard, it will be a big realization for a lot of people who are watching. But yeah, I do encourage dialogue, whether it's negative or positive. When I do post on social media, I expect both. But I would say for the most part, it's been a lot of alignment with what I'm sharing and gratitude for the messaging.
Well, two things. The less important one is that if it makes you feel any better, I travel relatively less than you do, and I still get accused of being a hypocrite all the time. It happens to literally anyone who speaks on climate. Right. But I'm sure you get a higher volume than I do. But it's a common phenomenon, and people will just do that in bad faith. And so I'm glad you speak out anyway, because it's definitely not a good reason to not speak out. But no, that's interesting. The fact that people come up to you and thank you for speaking out. That's such a good sort of telling indicator, because there's so much research showing that most people want clean energy, want action on climate, but also think that most other people don't care and don't want that. So, it's just a reminder that, you're right. The more you speak out on that and the more you sort of show people from a, position with a big platform like you have, it sort of encourages more people to realize, like, oh, I'm not alone. This is something that others value and that I should talk about more. I should, vote on, act on, et cetera. B, what's your experience been like?
Pretty much identical to yours.
Oh, that's awesome.
I try to share on social media as much as I can, and it comes with it. It's part of talking about climate change. Is you do get those hypocrites who say the exact same thing. You travel so much. You're on planes every week. How can you say this? And it's that idea of imperfect advocacy. And we're all imperfect, we're humans, and I think that is what makes us so much stronger. Everyone brings something to the table that their expertise and their stories that we're doing here today, and we need that united front of the collective fighting for change. It's interesting, especially I think surrounding these past games. There was a lot of political discourse surrounding Team USA athletes and kind of what that meant, and a lot of times people see climate as a very politicized topic and that's why athletes are scared to speak up about it, because you don't want to, a lot of athletes, like you said, are just there to do their job and to play their sport and perform. And you don't want to open yourself up to all of this backlash and stuff that will distract you. But climate change is a human issue. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, what you do for your job, your background is, climate change affects everybody. And we as athletes have kind of fallen onto this platform, I think, and it feels wrong to not say something.
Do you talk, do either of you talk with other athletes about this stuff, other Olympians, other people in your sport? I'm just curious what those conversations are like, especially because of what you just said, B, which, obviously I agree with completely, that climate change affects everyone and shouldn't be political, but unfortunately it does, has become politicized. So I'm just curious, what happens if you bring it up? Do others bring it up with you? What are those conversations like?
I think people in the snow sports industry, snowboarding specifically, are bringing it up without realizing it, of saying, oh my gosh, it's so hot today. And it's like, oh my gosh, we can't go out because it's storming. It's like, well, it's because of climate change, whether you want to believe it or not.
Sounds like a lot of journalism about climate change. You see articles about heat waves, and it's like, why doesn't it say climate change in it?
Yeah. Exactly. But I feel very lucky to have found a group in Protect Our Winters. All of us, we genuinely just love the outdoors, and we love recreating outside, and it's a place to reset your nervous system and spend time with your friends, and whether that be into a professional Olympic career or whether it's filmmaking or it's, so many different outlets. All of us are just united under that common goal, and it's pretty special.
And by the way, just since you mentioned Protect Our Winters, I want to bring up, you've been to Capitol Hill, you've been to the United Nations, you've been to, all sorts of places, right? What has that been like?
Really crazy. I never would have thought I would find myself in those places or even here today on this stage, but I just feel very lucky. And like we were talking about earlier, a lot of people do want change. They just are scared to speak up about it. And so to be in rooms surrounded by individuals who are not afraid to, lend their expertise and dive head into what we can do as a community, I feel very lucky, and I've learned an incredible amount.
I think that deserves applause. I think we'll take that. Melissa, what about you, just on the, talking with other athletes in those conversations?
I think you're right in that a lot of them maybe don't know that they're talking about it without talking about it. And I think in general, it is just kind of, it feels uncomfortable for a lot of people because it can be politicized. But more often than not, when you talk to them, they are in full alignment with the messaging and wanting to help, but just not really knowing how. And maybe wanting to get involved, but where do we start? And so I think it's important to have, models of athletes who are sharing resources, who are speaking about it, and providing options of what you can do, how to mitigate things here and there, small things. Like it can be too overwhelming when you have to go black and white, and I think sometimes that's a misconception about this world. I think it's like, oh, you have to stop flying, you can never eat meat again, and it can be really divisive, and so it doesn't feel very welcoming of a community. And so I think what we need, and especially with athletes, is to be like, no, it's small little things you can do. It's like little steps here, and whatever you have at your capacity, and if it's the best you can do, then that's what we need. And so I think it's sharing that messaging with athletes. It's important.
I mean, I think a key message from this conversation, and something that we talked about beforehand, just preparing for this, is just talking about climate, talking about clean energy, talking about clean transportation, is just, build support for all of that and get people, moving in that direction. Kaitlyn, the question I have for you then, which I think is the version of the question that I just asked Melissa and B, is, of all of the, I mean, not that this is the only thing you've studied, but of all of the work you could be doing as a climate scientist, and there's so much important climate research to be done, why have you focused in so many ways on climate in sports? I mean, you've been putting out reports on the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics and the World Cup. Why have you thought that was an area that was worthy of study and spending so much time on?
Yeah, well, the sports community is giant. It's huge, and it's an opportunity to remind people that we all have something that is being threatened by climate change, something we love. And it's just a time where everyone's eyes are on an event, and we can really help people understand that not only is climate change impacting this, but we actually know how. Attribution science has come really far, really long way, and so now we can actually say, oh, your temperatures today has actually been made at least 5 times more likely due to human-caused climate change. And when you have more of this information, you can really help people start those conversations that really need to be had. And it does still kind of shock me sometimes when we see these events and how quickly some of these athletes can go down. And it's just a reminder of how dangerous this really is, and it's very much a health issue. And I think that this is a really, it's an opportunity for us to just remind people of that there's also limits to how hot and humid our bodies will be able to function in. And when we look at thermometers, those only tell us half the story. It just tells us how hot, but it doesn't really tell us about the heat content of moisture in the air. So these may seem not that big of a deal, but it's actually a lot more dangerous than I think most people realize. And if it's coming for the most fit humans on the planet, I don't know really what it says for the rest of us, but I think the point is that we are all going to be impacted by this, and it's an opportunity to talk about it and why it matters. So.
If I can just add one more thing, like you were saying, we need sport. We've seen it, I think, with the World Cup, and we see it with the Olympics. The world is very divided right now, and lots of things are going on, and sport is one of those ways where we can all get together and root for the same team, and we need that unification.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great community to be a part of, and it, like we see at the World Cup, it's been great to have the World Cup in the United States and to see all people from all different countries rooting for their teams. And we are all in this together, wherever you come from, wherever you're, whatever you do, whatever you look like, we are all on this planet together. And it is an opportunity for us all to come together, yeah.
So I want to ask one last question here, and forgive me, you guys, I'm going to ask this slightly differently than I put it in the bullet points beforehand. We're headed towards 2028 here. I know today's the Road to 2028 Summit, 2 years from today, et cetera. But Matt, I think you made the point earlier that part of the goal of today is to catalyze investments that will not just make LA a better place for the 2028 Olympics, but that are going to last years and years beyond that and persist in Los Angeles. So, what two of you, Melissa and B, you guys are live here in the LA area, and I know Kaitlyn, like me, you're in Sacramento, but I'm from here originally. So I'll just ask you all what types of investments on the road to 2028, but especially looking beyond 2028, what would you like to see change in Los Angeles or improve or be better in Los Angeles that maybe if it's inspired by the Olympics would be great, but how can we make this a better, cleaner city in ways that looking even beyond the next 2 years, ways that maybe are inspired by the Olympics but that can last further. So if we do the Olympics again, what was 1984? 40 years ago. If we do the Olympics again in 40 years, what's a change that can be inspired by 2028 but that could really make this a place that people could come back to the next time we do the Olympics and say, wow, I'm so glad they did that on the road to 2028. Like, this really made LA a better place.
It's a great question. Off the top of my head, I
Yeah.
would say one of the most notable things for me as an athlete, and also very aware of my friends and family experience at the Olympics as well, is how they get around, transportation, and the use of public transportation in big cities. In Paris, it was wonderful. It was very easy for them to get around, whether it was biking or whether it was using their public transportation. And also for athletes, we would take the subway often to go watch other events, or the trams and things like that. And so I think having that be part of the legacy in LA or expand on that would be an idealistic version of what I think could happen and would positively impact the city and create a lot of great sustainability energy around that.
Love it. B?
Well, she stole mine.
Oh, no.
No, I would probably say the housing. In Italy, in my little bubble that we were in Livigno, all of us athletes were staying in hotels, and it was really comforting knowing that those places we were staying weren't about to just, get demolished or get abandoned. And obviously, we have a housing crisis here in LA, and so I think whether that be building new housing that can then be turned into affordable housing after the games, or using the college campuses that we have, UCLA and USC, and housing the athletes that way would be what I would like to see.
Love that too. Housing is obviously a climate solution, especially dense near transit, so those two things go together. Kaitlyn, want to finish us off here? You've had the most time to think.
Yeah, I guess. And I guess this might sound like a non-answer, but I'm going to say keep talking about it, find more ways and more venues to talk about it. Because, like you mentioned, so many people stay quiet about this, and it seems that to most people that maybe it's not important to a lot of people. It's an opportunity in LA where everyone's eyes are going to be on LA. It's a big stage, and it is an opportunity. I mean, attention's kind of hard to come by these days, and focus, so I'd say don't waste that opportunity, and make sure to use your voices and be talking about climate change and why it matters to you and how it's affecting your city.
Thank you. Let's have a round of applause for our panelists.